Hello, everyone, and welcome to a festive Christmas episode of the Criterion Connection. I guess it's festive at the movie we're doing. No, not really. It's called Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, and it's from 1983, and it stars David Bowie. The David Bowie.
Yeah, to a degree. Tom Conti beat Takeshi or Takeshi Kitano.
Yeah, Ryuichi Sakamoto. It's directed by Nagisa Oshima. And it's basically about, it's a World War II movie.
Based on one or two novels. So it's these novels are based about Lawrence Vanderpost's time spent in a POW camp in Japan during World War II. So, the movie takes place in 1942.
Yes.
In fact, I think it's one thing to note. There's not any Americans, and I believe the time frame checks out.
Yes.
Because Americans don't join the World War II effort until December of 1942. This is during the summer.
Yes.
So it's just British soldiers and then the Imperial Army. And we are dealing with this particular prison camp with Captain Yanoi. And then his kind of de facto second is Sergeant Hara, played by Takeshi.
Yes.
And then you have Mr. Lawrence, who's kind of a liaison between the British prisoners and the Imperial Army, because he's fluent in Japanese, played by Tom Conti. And then later on, David Bowie shows up, but we have, I think Jack Thompson plays Hixley, which is, he's the POW commander, so he's the high-ranking POW. He's supposed to be the guy in charge of all the British guys.
Yes.
And basically, we follow them as we deal with, war crimes.
Yes. And potential... Oh, you might get executed. Okay, you're not. You might get executed. Okay, you're not. A lot of it dealing with Jack, who is David Bowie's character. Who, of course, David Bowie, his acting is always... it's always something to bring up because it's something about his offness. There's something off about him in every role he's in, whether in this or The Man. What was the movie we watched?
Man Fell from Earth.
Man Fell from Earth.
He's also in Labyrinth.
He's also in. We also did Twin Peaks. Well, I did solo episode Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. He's weird in that. Basically, he has like an offness, but it's endearing and it's captivating.
Yeah, he's so good in this movie, and he plays the perfect role.
Yes.
Because they're going to list David Bowie as the star. Whenever you look up this movie, it's going to say, starring David Bowie.
Yes.
He is the biggest star in the movie.
I mean, he has a different color eye.
Yeah, well, sort of. He's got two different sized pupils.
Yeah.
But David Bowie's character is not your main character. He's the most important character.
Yes.
As we talked about. But he's not your main character. Your main character is Lawrence. Or Mr. Lawrence, played by Tom Conti, who's always trying to negotiate between the Imperial Army and the British soldiers. He's always trying to be a peacemaker, and basically he's like, we're already imprisoned. The Japanese, they're not adhering to Geneva Convention most of the time. They don't believe in prisoners of war. They think it's a shameful thing. So it's a culture clash immediately. And then he's just like, we just need to ride it out until the war's over. Or until something happens. And what Jack does, he gets sent to this camp. He was initially going to be executed. But they find at the trial that Captain Yanoi is summoned to oversee. It's like a military tribunal trial.
Yeah.
No public, probably no records. It's like off the books. And he eventually gets found to become a prisoner of war. So they have to treat him as a prisoner of war as much as they're willing to. And Yonoi becomes captivated by this guy. Because David Bowie, he plays an incredibly, like, charming but rebellious character.
Yes.
But he has a lot of depth, and Yonoi sees something in Jack, like a regret that kind of endears him to Jack, and Jack, like, and that's the thing that David Bowie brings to the character is this awe and charisma, like aura.
Yeah.
That, you know, you can't.
The magnetism.
Yeah, you can't not pay attention to him. Yes. So he comes in and kind of flips everything upside down.
Yeah.
You know, he's incredibly rebellious. He's a great leader, as Mr. Lawrence tells us. People follow him because he's generally doing the right thing and doing the best thing that he feels for his people. He always stands up for his guys.
Yes.
And we find out later why that happens. But yeah, this is it's a character-driven movie.
Oh, yeah.
There's not a lot of plot outside of
war.
Following the day-to-day struggle of being in a POW camp.
Yes.
Whether you are a guard or a warden versus whether you're one of the prisoners.
Yes. One thing, the acting is great.
Yes.
We also have the guy who plays Yonoi, Ryuichi Sakamoto. Yeah. He also did the score, and we gotta talk about the score.
Score's great.
The score is like, it doesn't need to be. It's in the wrong movie, if that makes sense. It feels like it's supposed to be like a soft sci-fi movie, but it works for this movie so well. That's what I'm saying. It feels like it's it shouldn't be here, but it feels like it's the only score that should be in here. You know?
Yeah, and what's, like, it has this, I don't know, it's hard to describe.
It feels otherworldly at times.
Yeah.
It feels like this is like...
And it makes sense.
Yeah.
Because this is not in the war, this is not the front line, as we've seen in many movies. So, like, it's this otherworldly score, it works for it, and what's crazy... On top of it, there's this catchiness that you'll find yourself like humming certain melodies.
Yeah.
You know, as it's going, or maybe right after watching it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's a tremendous, really not overimposing either. Just a really solid, piece of work.
It's not like a Hans Zimmer score where it's like, it's very like serene or haunting. They use the right parts in the right places. Mm. Like one I can remember is the score when Yonoi's like, bring all your troops. And then he's like, these are all my troops. I'm like, no, the sick ones, bring them. Yeah. And there's that, I like how purposeful, like, you could have cut that scene down of them walking out of the hostel. But no, they did it purposely to make it slow, like long. Like, this is how many people are sick from this and hurt from this war.
And yeah, and it's not
and that
only...
score is showing it.
And it's not only that, it's letting you know, like, this is atypical, this isn't right.
Yeah.
Like, based on the character reactions, the score, the way it builds up there, and the way it plays as the soldiers are coming out, you're realizing, like, this is real messed up.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to get grotesque. I mean, there's times where it walks that line with the
seppuku.
Yeah, seppuku scenes. And
especially that guy just gives up. And he's like, I'm done halfway through. And it's like, oh, gosh.
Yeah, and certain things, like, there's torture, but it's not overbearing. I think they're very tactful with it. They get the point across, and that's it.
Yeah.
But it's something where like, this is really wrong.
Yeah.
And this is not cool. And then, of course, the scene has one of the perfect endings.
Yes.
With Jack breaking rank and doing something that costs him his life, but saves
Others.
a whole bunch of other guys, and just kind of changes the whole atmosphere of the camp.
If he didn't do that, it involves Hixley. If you had no idea what he did, what chain reaction would that cause?
Yeah.
And I think that's why Jack did that, and he gets, oh boy, he something.
And at the end of the day, I mean, what happens to Jack is not cool.
Yeah.
And we see that later on with the coda scenes, as they call them. But ultimately, I think everybody recognizes that Jack saved a whole lot of lives while giving up his own.
Yes.
In that situation, he did something that ultimately causes what happens to him. But like you said, what if what happens to Hixley happens?
I mean, that was the commanding officer.
And then all of a sudden, you already know the guy is committing, crimes against the Geneva Convention.
Yeah.
And on top of it, now you got a bunch of angry British soldiers with their commander down.
Yeah.
At some point, there's going to be some sort of uprising, and a whole lot of blood's going to be spilled.
Oh, yeah.
And Jack stops it. And I think both sides recognize that.
Yeah. And the coda's great, too.
Yeah.
The coda's that's the ribbon on top.
There's so many great scenes in the movie.
Yeah.
There's the military tribunal scene where David Bowie gets introduced. There's the even before that, when Hara is dishing out punishment, and at first you think he's like the really bad guy.
Yeah.
And then you start putting things together, and he's not the really bad guy in the scene. And then there's the great scene where Bowie, when the guy goes to attack Bowie while he's in solitary, and he stops him with the aid of the carpet. And then, he gets Lawrence, and he's about to run out, but he gets caught. And he has that face-off with Yanoi. And he sticks the bayonet in the ground, and he refuses to fight. There's so many great scenes, and honestly, the best one is Lawrence and Hara in the coda.
Yeah. Where it just seems like, I wouldn't say war buddies, but it's like reminiscing about the past and stuff like that. The coda, I mean, it's not really a spoiler, but World War II ends eventually.
Yeah,
that's the coda.
Yeah, this is 4 years later, after all the events that happened.
Basically, roles are reversed now.
Yeah, and we come to the end of World War II, and the Japanese had lost, and the last scene is with Hara, Sergeant Hara, who is about to be executed for war crimes after being held prisoner from the as an Allied prisoner, and then he requests to see Lawrence one last time, and Lawrence comes in the night before he's to be executed, and they have a great conversation. And if anybody underestimates Takeshi Kitano's acting skills, watch that scene. Actually, watch him in the whole movie. He's tremendous. And it ends with the title
drop.
The title line where he wishes Lawrence a Merry Christmas.
Hence why we're doing this on the week of Christmas.
Yeah, because
also it's in the title. That's why.
There's an event that happens probably
halfway point.
Yeah, about halfway into the movie that involves the day of Christmas and Hara.
No, actually, I think it's a little past the halfway point. It's around the halfway point is when we get into Bowie and Lawrence just reminiscing, and then we get flashbacks. And if I had any fault with the movie, I think you could have trimmed that down a lot more. the flashbacks are a little too long.
Yeah, my problem. Yeah, that too is my
and here's
problem.
the thing: the pacing of the movie for 2 hours doesn't feel like 2 hours. So
Yeah.
I'm not dogging on the pacing, but there's anything I was just not captivated with. It was those flashbacks.
And my biggest thing is Jack's flashback.
Yes.
Because they give him priority treatment for the film. That's my biggest knock. Because we get Lawrence, and he's talking about a flashback, but he's telling it as a story because he wakes up from a dream and he starts telling Jack about this woman in Singapore.
Yeah.
And that's the scene, is we watch Lawrence talk to Jack through the wall and tell him about the girl in Singapore. Jack's flashback that we get after that, there's a whole scene break, and we go back as him as a kid, and we get this whole backstory between him and his brother, and then them going to boarding school, and it's just, to me, it's very long. I think
They could have probably just told you this.
you could have done the same thing you did with Lawrence, where it's just David Bowie recounting the story as like a monologue.
You could just say, "Yeah, I was in boarding school with my brother,"
Or
and then that's it.
yeah, it just, to me, like, it fleshes out his character, but I just don't see how it
Is needed.
is super needed. You could have done it a different way. I kind of like the mysteriousness of Jack's regrets.
Yeah.
I think that would have been interesting to play that, where we never know what it is that he, like, even like let him tell the story, but allow the audience to whether they buy in or not.
Yeah.
Whether he's lying or not.
Yeah. Well, for instance, he said he can't sing.
Yeah.
But would you recommend this movie to the audience?
I would recommend it. And I think it's worth watching. I really do. To me, it's just a really great performance piece between those four main actors, and just kind of the conflicting relationships, and it just really works for me.
As someone who doesn't particularly like war movies, let's just say you hate war movies, I still recommend this movie for you.
It's not a big war movie.
It's not a big war movie, but it's just the setting. That's it. I'll say everyone does great in it. It's got a great pace to it. It's got a great score to it. It's got a lot of great things, and I think it's definitely worth watching. Mm-hmm. Not just for like the Criterion watcher, but for the everyday person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because to me, it's not a war movie. War is the context.
Yeah.
It's more akin to like a Shawshank Redemption, or a Green Mile.
Yeah.
Like, it's a prison movie, but it's set during World War II, and it adds that special context of completely different cultures.
Yes.
Clashing as, certain people in power and the ones that aren't, and then your coda, it's flipped, and it's just a great. It's a great piece of art. It really is. That's
the idea of you're just consequences of someone that just thinks they're right. Mm-hmm. That's the difference between those prisoners of war. It's like the people that got you think they're right. And stuff like that.
Yeah, it's such a great dialogue between Lawrence and Hara at the end.
Yeah. So that's our thoughts on Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. Let us know in the comment section below what you think about this movie and all that stuff. Like, subscribe, share. Please share, because we've seen the subscribers growing. We want more. Give us more. That's a good Christmas present for us. Just give us more. I'm not sure if we're doing an episode next week, because usually the last week of the year we don't really do anything. It's kind of like a vacation kind of thing. But we may do something. Who knows? It's a week from now. But until then, you guys have a happy holiday. Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever you celebrate. Festivus.
New Year's. If we don't see you. So happy holidays. And until next time, I'm Wade. And I'm still Joe.
And we will see you later, and Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. Think he's listening?